Elena, tell us when you think there's a big enough group, and then I can get going.
Yeah, I think it's fine, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the EuroHPC webinar, co-organised between EuroHPC and the EuroHPC User Forum Coordination Group. This morning, we've got a very packed agenda, and the purpose of this discussion today is to outline some of the opportunities that exist in terms of how to access our systems. I am Josephine Wood. I'm the Head of Strategy and Governance here at EuroHPC Joint Undertaking, and I have the honour of opening this meeting. So I just wanted to open this with just a quick description of what the JU does and what we do and how we're involved in this whole story. And then I will hand over to Chris Richardson, who is the chair of the User Forum Coordination Group. So quickly going through my slides, just as a reminder, EuroHPC Joint Undertaking is a funding body set up by the European Union. It was based in Luxembourg, and it is governed by the European Commission, participating states, and 3 member states. What is important for you to know today is that the combination of national money and European money has been pulled together to procure and deploy new computing resources for our research community here in Europe. Over the last 6 years, we've procured supercomputers for high-performance supercomputers, AI factories, and quantum infrastructure, as well as funding research innovation into developing the next generation of supercomputers and quantum technologies. Today, the whole discussion will be focusing on how to access our systems, and in particular focus on 2 of the calls that we know that you're particularly interested in, of which my colleague Chris and Clara will tell you a bit more later. So just to tell you that these are all the different areas that we're funding research and innovation and infrastructure. And just to tell you exactly where our supercomputers are located, as you can see, we have systems up and running across the European Union in all these different parts of the countries. And you, as researchers, will be able to access most of them, because most of them are online across the Union. More precisely, and I don't know if you've had a chance to access our systems, but the operational ones that are currently working and therefore able to be accessed are Jupiter in Germany, Lumi in Finland, Leonardo and Lisa in Italy, Mare Nostrum 5 in Spain, Meluxina in Luxembourg, Vega in Slovenia, Discover and Discover Plus in Bulgaria, Carolina in the Czech Republic, and Deucalion in Portugal. I hope I got all that right. And on top of that, we're investing in new systems that are coming online very soon in Greece, Sweden, France, Ireland, and Hungary. And the other thing that we're doing is federating these different systems so that users from across the European Union and users who reside in the participating states of our 38 countries can use our systems. And on that eligibility point, Clara, my colleague, will explain more later. The new kids on the block are our AI factories. We've now started and invest 2.6 billion investment in 19 AI factories, again located across 16 European countries, and 13 AI factory antennas located over 13 additional participating states. And the idea is that from now on, our researchers and users can then start experimenting with AI using our compute power. Again, location. All these systems will be located, the factories will be located in the European Union, and our antennas will be located outside the participating states. And as you can see from here, we're currently in the procurement stage, so all of these systems should come online one by one from late 2026, 2027 onwards. And then last but not least, our quantum systems. We've now procured 10 quantum computers from 6 different technologies that are made in Europe. And the idea here is, again, to give access to our researchers across Europe to see, to literally, as my boss would say, to play and play with them and test out potential new applications in different areas. And again, I think Chris and Clara may mention a little bit about what are the opportunities to access those systems in the countries. Voilà, so that's the opportunity, and that's why we're setting up the system, and that's why EuroHPC exists, to provide this resource to our users. I'm going to stop here by plugging one of our conferences that EuroHPC is organising. It's in Dublin in September, and it's focusing on users, so you guys, and give you an update on the systems, the calls, and of course the projects that come out of it. Because at the end of the day, all this investment is being done because we want to try and get some, we want good science to come out of the systems, and we will be showcasing the science that comes out of the systems and the innovation and the breakthroughs that will have an impact on our society and the future of what we're doing. So please keep an eye on our website for this new event. And on that, I just want to quickly do my thank yous, because I probably won't get a chance to say it again, but I would like to give a big thank you to the User Forum Coordination Group, and particularly the colleagues who dreamt up this webinar this morning and pushed us to do it. So thank you to them. They are all involved in the session this morning, so you'll meet them all one by one. And also a huge, huge, huge thank you to my colleagues who have helped organise this, in particular Eleanor, Maxine, and of course Chris and Clara, who are on the front line and are there to help assist you guys to get on our systems. So on that note, I'm going to pass on to Chris. Chris Richardson is our chair of the User Forum Coordination Group. He very kindly took on that role when we set it up 2 years ago, I think it was. And the idea is that EuroHPC JU has its own focus group, if I can call you that from the users who can give us advice and guidance on how we can improve our services to you and our different calls. I'm not going to do the housekeeping speech because I know Zoe will do it later, but on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And Chris, I'm going to turn off my presentation and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much, Joe. I hope everyone can see that okay. Yeah, so as Joe said, today's webinar has been organised jointly with EuroHPC JU and the User Forum, and it's all about access to the machines. So I'm just going to say a few words about the User Forum itself. And yeah, I'm Chris Richardson. I'm at the University of Cambridge in the UK, and I'm the chair of the coordination group. So who are the EuroHPC User Forum? And what I want to say really is basically it's you. This is a photo here of a previous user day, which we held in Copenhagen last year in September. People from all over Europe came to it and were talking about all the different projects which they'd run on different HPC systems across EuroHPC. So it's an opportunity to exchange ideas, to meet each other and to talk to each other. And that's the basic concept of the user forum, is it's communication. So it allows us to talk to each other and also to pass messages and ideas up to the EuroHPC as well, and to get two-way conversation going between the JU and just the grassroots users. So to make this happen, we also have the coordination group, which is a smaller subset of the user forum, just a handful of people. And we try to make sure that things happen, just like today's webinar. So as I mentioned already, the purpose of the user forum is communication and exchange. So it's a communication and exchange with each other, but also with EuroHPC JU to promote the vision of the EuroHPC. We do get some help from Joe and Elna and all the other staff at EuroHPC, so that's really useful. And we can then send feedback to the advisory groups. So I know EuroHPC JU has a lot of bureaucratic institutions inside it, and it's really useful for us to be able to interact with those and help to give them some feedback about what users are thinking. So this is roughly how it looks. We have a coordination group. We have a monthly meeting on Teams, including some of the EuroHPC staff. We are just a bunch of users. We're not. We don't have any special privilege. We're just like you, and we have elections for new members of the coordination group from time to time. And obviously, one of the problems we do have as well, being dispersed across the continent, is very difficult to meet in person. So we have these online methods of discussion. So there's a Slack channel, which you're all welcome to join. And I think we're going to try and post the information for that in the questions and answers so that people can have a look at that. There's also a discourse forum, which is also useful. And so, yes, this allows us to have two-way communication and connection to some of these other bodies which exist within inside EuroHPC, like Epicure, REAG, etc. Yeah, so there's a little diagram at the bottom showing the sort of concept. So the user forum encapsulates everybody. User forum coordination group is this smaller group which can then have more regular meetings with the JU. That's more or less all I want to say, is that, except that, you know, if you have an opportunity to join us online, you can today just ask questions in the Q&A, obviously, for today's webinar, and especially any questions which are relevant to access. And for more long-term ongoing conversations, it's really better to connect with Slack or Discourse, because you can carry on asking us or talking to each other on there for the rest of the year. It would be really nice to see as many of you as possible in Dublin in September, when we'll have user days, so as Joe already mentioned. So that is more or less it. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Zoe Cornia, and Ivan Carneo, who have been organizing the webinar. Great thanks to them. They've done it all basically with help from the JU staff. So yeah, Zoe.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you all for joining. My name is Zoe Cornia. I'm based at the Biomedical Research Foundation of the Academy of Athens in Greece, and I'm a member of the EuroHPC User Forum Coordination Group and part of the organization team of this webinar. Before I introduce the first speaker, I'd like to mention that you can place your questions using the Q&A function that you can find in the top panel of Teams. We will be taking questions at the end of each presentation, but we also have dedicated time for discussion at the end of this webinar. So in case your question is not taken up, not to worry, we will take this in the end. So we will not be opening the floor to participants outside the Q&A channel, so please use that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Klara Mestrovic, who is the head of unit of the peer review team in the EuroHPC JU. And Klara will be presenting, she can share the slides now. She will be presenting an overview of the EuroHPC JU access calls with a focus on regular and extreme access calls.
Hello, thank you. I'll just start. Okay, I hope you can see my slides. I hope it's fine. Okay, so good morning, everyone. So my name is Klara Mestrovic, and thank you, Zoe, for introducing me. So I work as head of the peer review sector in the JU, and today I will present a bit about our access opportunities with some special emphasis on the regular and extreme scale access. And yeah, let's start. So the first thing what I'd like to do in presenting our access modes is putting them in a larger context on what we do as an institution. So as you may know, one of our key missions is actually the infrastructure procurement. And with this, we mean our supercomputers, AI factories, and quantum systems. And why we do this? Precisely to provide access to you, to our users. And in order to provide opportunities for different types of users. We have different access calls, and then in order to provide this access in a fair and transparent way, we establish different peer review processes per access call. So before going into the access calls themselves, I would like to mention a bit about the eligibility. We do not have a lot of constraints, but those that we have are quite important. And basically here, what you will see is a part of our regulation, and it may sound a bit complicated, but I will explain it. So Joe presented our infrastructure, what we have and what is upcoming. So basically this infrastructure is funded by different programs. And of course, countries that have contributed to certain programs, basically they can have access to the infrastructure. So it's kind of simple as that. In this line, what we look at is the principal investigator or project lead and team members have to be affiliated with institutions within these countries. So it's either Horizon 2020 countries list or Digital Europe or Horizon Europe countries list. So there are these two different things. So for Horizon 2020, this regarding to our infrastructure, this falls under our pre-exascale and petascale systems. And for the Digital Europe program and Horizon Europe, this is our exascale systems, future mid-ranges, and quantum systems and AI factories. The difference is slightly that the list of Horizon Europe is slightly longer, so some additional countries can access our system. And this is basically presented in our forms when applying to the call. Also, there is this thing that is in italic, meaning that we would like that the principal investigators confirm that they will be employed 3 months after the end allocation date. Of course, we cannot influence the future, but it somehow gives a little bit of reassurance that the project will continue uninterrupted. And the last thing to indicate with regard to the eligibility is for all proposals that are related to industry, meaning that you have selected industry access tracks, or for industrial innovation proposals where we have the specific access calls for industry, the principal investigator or project lead must be affiliated with an industrial organization. The second part for eligibility is basically that we are open to all types of institutions, so industry, academia, and public sector within all fields of research. With relating to extreme scale access and regular access, we have, as you see below, certain resources percentages and prioritization tracks. So this is 20% for industry, 5% public administration, and the biggest chunk goes to the scientific access track. Okay, and now we go to our calls. So we have now evolved to a point that we have two main groups of access calls. So the first group is the calls for traditional HPC applications. And here we have 4 different access modes, 2 of which are focused on preparatory activities for code development and code scaling and benchmarks. So these are the benchmark access and development access. And basically the purpose of these calls is to obtain this benchmark information of your codes and then feed it into the big calls that are extreme scale access and regular access that are intended for actual production activities. And then we have another group, which is for the artificial intelligence applications. Here we also have 4 different access modes. One is focused on scientific applications. So this is AI for Science and Collaborative EU Projects access. And then we have 3 different ones for industry. So these are exclusively for industrial innovation. So large scale access, playground access, and fast lane access. And we will soon have, as Joe indicated, a 9th access mode, which will be for providing access to our quantum infrastructure. So we will also briefly mention a bit later. So to explain how this works, so what happens after the proposal has been submitted. So the first call that will be explained is the extreme scale access call. This is the most complicated call and it takes kind of the longest, but it also provides the most resources that you can request. So after the proposal have been submitted and the cutoff has passed, the office performs an administrative check. Those proposals that are not successful here, basically they do not proceed to the further steps of evaluation. Those that have been successful proceed to technical assessment. Within the technical assessment, our supercomputing sites basically evaluate the proposal on its technical feasibility. After which we evaluate the proposals scientifically. So 3 external referees on the domain of the proposal are assigned to it and they evaluate the proposal. During this time, our access committee members actually also submit their questions, and the applicants are able to provide responses to all of this, also to the technical assessment, scientific evaluation, and potentially questions raised by the Access Resource Committee. All of this is taken into consideration while our rapporteurs that are part of the Access Resource Committee provide their reports. So 2 rapporteurs are assigned per proposal, 1 lead, 1 second rapporteur, and basically they write each one individual report, and the lead rapporteur writes a consolidated report. All of this grading, all of these evaluations from all of these steps come to the Access Resource Committee meeting, where we meet in person and basically discuss, rank, and evaluate all of these proposals submitted all together. And the purpose of this meeting to provide a consolidated list and a ranking of these proposals, to be a ranking that will basically show which proposals will be funded and in which order. So this list goes to the resource allocation panel meeting that we usually have the next day. And there we basically allocate resources to the proposals according to the Access Resource Committee meeting ranking list. And Chris will actually explain how this works and how the proposals are allocated and what are the potential outputs. After we close the RAP meeting, all of this goes to our governing board. Basically, the final list of the awards goes to our governing board, and this usually is the moment when applicants start contacting us. What about the results? Where are they? So this usually takes 2 weeks after, because it's a written procedure. And after this is approved, only then we basically communicate the results. And now the regular access. So regular access is still has a fairly complex peer review process. However, as you can see, it's like split in these 2 because it doesn't have the scientific evaluation and the response phase steps. And you will see now the colors will change for the steps that are actually applicable to regular access. So I will just go very fast through them. So as well, we perform an administrative check. It goes to the technical assessment, to the supercomputing centers. After this, 2 rapporteurs are assigned per proposal. They are evaluated within a domain. All of this goes to the super panel meeting, where the proposals are all discussed together with the ranking list. Then it goes to the resource allocation panel meeting, where we again allocate the resources. It goes to the governing board afterwards, and only then we communicate the resources. And then last but not least is just to mention benchmark and development access. So these are fairly simple. Once the proposal is submitted, it goes directly to the technical assessment, where they are evaluated by our supercomputing sites. And basically, if they are okay, they receive access. So now a little bit of comparison and differences for the extreme scale access and regular access. So extreme scale access, as here is suggested, is designed for very high impact, high gain applications that require extremely large allocations. And we offer these allocations on our p-exascale and exascale supercomputers. Here are some resources thresholds. So this is kind of like taking from all of the offers. But the exact numbers per partition, please see our website, and there you will be able to see the limitations of each system. For the CPU partitions, let's say that you can request from 130K to 5.5 million, which is quite a lot. So this is actually Mare Nostrum GPP. It's a very large partition. And for GPU partitions, this range comes from 160K to 2.7 million, and I believe this is from Jupyter, so this is why it's like the overall offer per cutoff, which is also, yeah, the applicants can request the full offer, if of course it makes sense for the proposal. And then in comparison, we have the regular access, which is also designed for research application for large allocations. And what by this we mean the following ranges, and we offer, but there is a slight difference that we offer also access here, not only on exascale and pre-exascale, we also offer resources on our petascale systems. And here we see that the ranges are quite different from what we have in the extreme scale. So for CPU partitions, this is from 60K to 1.7 million. This is again Mare Nostrum, very large partition. And then for GPU partitions, this is 20K to 220K node hours. Some other differences, so as you may have seen from all of the steps that were described before, so the evaluation duration for extreme scale access is 6 months, which is quite long, and this is 6 months after the cutoff date, while for regular access, this is 4 months, so this is a slight difference. And then we have some things that they share. So both calls have different access tracks that you can select, if you remember from the eligibility slide. So we have the scientific access track, the industrial, and as well the public administration access track. For the proposal preparation, we definitely advise and kind of require to do like a benchmark access or development access before, basically just to prepare your proposals for these large requests and allocations. And last but not least, once the proposals are accepted, the duration is for 12 months in both cases. There are some possibilities for extension. So in both cases, the projects can be extended for 3 months, of course, if duly justified cases. Okay, now very fast to go over our AI factory access calls. So as mentioned before, we have AI for science calls. So this is a scientific access call, basically that is intended for AI workflows, but in the fields of science. We offer 6 cutoffs per year, and the allocations are for 6 months. The process is quite simple, and it lasts for 6 months. So the proposals after the cutoff date go on under the administrative check. Afterwards, they pass through the technical assessment. Each proposal is as well assigned to reviewers in the field. After this, the results are consolidated and approved by the office, and we communicate the results. Then we have the large-scale access, which actually entails all of these same elements in the peer review process. There are some differences in terms that this is exclusively for industry. We offer actually 2 cutoffs per month. So in order to ensure business continuity and to ensure a lot of opportunities for industry, the allocations can be for 3, 6, or 12 months. And basically also the proposals undergo this assessment procedure, with the difference that the technical assessment and expert evaluation is actually done by the AI factories. So we then receive the results from each AI factory, and basically our executive director approves them, and then we communicate the results. And then again, last but not least, we have fastline and playground access, again, for industrial applications only. Playground access is more for testing and for entry-level users. The allocations are as well 1, 2, or 3 months. For Fastlane, this is actually for users that are a bit more familiar, and they can get up to 50K GPU hours there. And also allocations for 1, 2, or 3 months. And then slight announcement of the quantum access call that is, we hope, soon to be open. So this will now be a pilot stage that we hope that it will last between 6 months or 1 year. And the intention is to provide very quick preliminary access to our quantum infrastructure. This will be kind of designed as a feedback call that we would like to receive a lot of feedback from the users, also to the hosting entities, to us, from the hosting entities to us, and so on. What we have envisaged so far, so this may slightly change, so this is just an announcement, don't take it as 100%. Basically some things may change in this regard. So what we definitely plan is that the evaluations will be based on technical feasibility. There will be probably options to be assigned to perform emulator benchmarks to prove the technical feasibility of the foreseen application. The allocations will be 3 or 6 months. We, for now, foresee that we will provide resources in QPU minutes, and that we would have allocation ranges, so there will be minimum and maximums that you will be able to request. This, however, may change. We may decide to have a fixed allocation, but this will all be very clearly communicated once we are live. And we have envisaged monthly cutoff dates, so it will work very similar to benchmark and development access. And we really hope that this will be open for in summer, and we look forward to receiving these new applications. So for planning and for those that have submitted proposals maybe in the past recent cutoffs, and for those that are planning on applying in the future cutoffs for calls for traditional HPC extreme scale access, the next cutoff we plan on 19th of October. So there's plenty of time to prepare. Regular access in 4th of September as well, plenty of time to prepare. Benchmark and development access, we have cutoff every month. So the next one is naturally on 1st of June. With regard to evaluation and results period of those that have been submitted now recently. So for the evaluation meetings of extreme scale access, they will be in mid-September, meaning that we will communicate the results in early October. For regular access, the evaluation meetings will be end of June and the results communicated mid-July. And for benchmark and development, the results should be generally communicated 2 weeks after the cutoff date by the latest. Then submission deadlines for AI Factory access calls for AI for Science. This is on the 30th of June. Large scale access, 2 cutoffs per month. So one is the upcoming one is on 29th of May. Playground and Tesla are basically continuously open, so the evaluations are done on a rolling basis. The evaluation and results period for AI for Science, those that are now currently under evaluation, we will communicate the results in early June. Those for large-scale access results, we will communicate end of May, and then the next cutoff will then be mid of June. The results, and then basically Playground and Fastlane access, we have the results either 2 or 4 days after the submission. Something has happened. Okay. A very fast overview. We have many supporting services to help to prepare certain things. So just to mention a few, I will not take too much time here. So any applications applying to our AI factories can ask for specific support offered by this AI factory within a certain business sector. So please feel free to contact them directly. Then we have Epicure and Minerva. They both provide high-level support teams, basically for helping with the code porting and many other support that you may need. This for Epicure, Epicure helps with the calls for traditional HPC, and it's always tied to the application itself. So in the application form, you can request this type of support. Minerva is for our AI calls. Also, you can request via the application form, and also you can contact them directly despite not having necessarily an application. So you can contact them directly and request support. Then we have our network of NCCs, National Competence Centers that may help you with preparing your applications. We have our centers of excellence that do a wonderful job in code developments, Fortissimo that that funds and helps our SMEs and startups in the domains of HPC and AI. So, okay, and I will finish with 2 slides on the statistics, and probably I went over my time, but just to show a bit of like a success story here. So up until now, we have funded quite a lot, like 3,000 projects, and awarded 177 million node hours. And this is across different calls. And I think what is interesting always to see here that we have, for example, the most proposals being submitted in development access. However, the most resources, of course, is naturally because it's in extreme scale and as well regular access. And the last slide is just a bit of a country distribution. So just keep in mind that this is only for the PI country, PI affiliation country. And in this line, we have Italy, Germany, and Spain somehow being most represented at the moment. So this is it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara, for this very rich webinar with so many information. So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A. And the first one is to Paolo Restuccia is asking how stringent the PI contract eligibility requirement is. The PI must hold an active contract at least 3 months beyond the end of the allocated resource period. So if applied strictly, that would seem to exclude many early career researchers, particularly the postdoctoral researchers who have fixed-term 1-year contracts from applying to regular and extreme access calls. And they want to know if this interpretation is correct.
Okay, I can answer here, or if you prefer, I can type the answer. In general, we are not very strict on this, to be very honest. It's not that we are going and asking their employment contracts, right? So this is somehow just to ensure that the project will be able to continue in case the PI will have to leave the organization. Of course, we had the cases that we needed to change the PIs. As I said, we cannot control the future. We don't know what it holds. It is just some form of reassurance. In these cases, we would advise always to have co-PIs, which can be indicated in this, so they can kind of take over. So maybe a senior professor in that case. Yeah, so there are options, and they can always direct some particular use cases. It's best to contact us directly, and then we can solve them together. We can also make a note in our file, so we are kind of prepared in case something happens afterwards. So this would be
okay. Thank you. Thank you for being so flexible. I actually also had a question. So you mentioned that the allocation would come between 4 and 6 months, depending on whether it's regular or extreme scale access. But we all know that we are in a very fast pace area, high performance computing. So is there any ways the EuroHPC discussing ways how to shorten this evaluation period? Because 6 months may seem a lot of time for people applying.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it is quite a lot of time, but from our side, like managing the full process. So if we want to maintain the same level of quality of peer review, then this is the shortest that we can go. I must say it's really overwhelming. And actually, a good news from one point of view is that we keep receiving more and more proposals, which means more involvement. Well, this is a very good thing, right? And actually, last cutoff, we received the most in all calls, actually. So, and quite significant increase. And in regular, if we may say, we passed 100 proposals. So it's quite competitive. So we need, I'm a strong believer, and I should be because of my position of peer review and high quality peer review. So yeah, this is the, yeah, I don't see it happening, but this is why we have different access modes. So for certain things are a little smaller projects, it's a bit shorter. For extremely large, we need to just, basically needs to be justified why we would allocate this many resources.
Yeah, so the AI mode seems to be a little faster. And there's a question from Michele Pellegrino asking, what is the concrete difference between the AI factory and a regular supercomputer offering as well, cards to run on? Like, what's the difference?
It's just that AI factories will be more so it's basically for AI types of workloads, right? So, and HPC should be more oriented on classical HPC applications. However, we see this is a spill. Now we use AI in everything. So this is, of course, not a straightforward cut. However, if we target industry, then there we are we provide faster access because it's a bit different than in academic type of applications. Again, extreme scale access, the most resources. So they cannot get the same level of resources, this for sure. So this is always the main guiding criteria. The more resources, the more complex. This is how it goes.
Okay, wonderful. So I would like to remind to the people who just joined that we are taking questions through the Q&A function that you find in the top panel of the Teams application. And please post your questions there. And we have time for discussion. There's more questions, but we can discuss them at the end of the webinar. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, Chris Bouillon, who is program manager of the peer review team and deals with all aspects of the access for all the calls evaluations. And she will be speaking about the scientific evaluation process for access calls proposals. So Chris, you could share your slides. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you once again for joining this webinar. My name is Krishnakshi Bhuya, and as I was introduced by Zoe, I'm a program manager in the peer review sector of EuroHPC. So in the previous presentation, you already heard about the different access calls, and Clara also walked us through the different steps involved in the workflow of each of these access modes. So in this presentation, we will dive a little bit deeper into the evaluation process. So this will be particularly the extreme scale call and the regular access call, which has the longest and most comprehensive evaluation process. As the question already came in, why so long? And again, to emphasize, this is because of the scale of the resources that are offered. And that's why the expected scientific impact from these proposals are also higher. That is why we have longer evaluation process for this. So in this presentation, we will basically walk through the full cycle of the proposal evaluation, starting with the proposal preparation, and then trying to show a bit more closely how the proposals are assessed and ranked, starting from the administrative check, the technical assessment, the scientific evaluation, and then the expectations and importance of the response phase from the applicants, and finally the panel discussion, and from there how it goes to the official outcome of the evaluation process, the resources, how they are allocated. So we will start with the proposal preparation. This is from our point of view, how we see it, that a strong proposal starts with clearly defined scientific objectives and a realistic implementation plan. And applicants in their proposal, cumulative of the online form as well as the project scope and plan document that is a part of these proposals of the big calls, they should justify their amount of resources requested. So they should not just say what they want to achieve, but also why such large allocation is required for their project and how they reach the calculation. So this last point that you see, alignment between objective and requested resources, reviewers like to check this very closely. And then they also particularly pay attention to the scalability and performance details, whether there are consistencies across all the proposal sections. So, And the Gantt chart and the timeline, which is also part of the proposal, we would say that a realistic timeline and dissemination strategy are also important indicators of project maturity. Moving forward to the like what applicants should consider. So we will highlight some common points that applicants should pay close attention to while drafting their project. Always be mindful of the cutoff date and time. So this is something that usually is not extended. If it is extended, we already announce it in all the channels, but often we receive these kind of queries at the last moment that, I missed submitting my proposal by half a day. Is it possible to extend? Or some people even ask, okay, I have not finished yet. Can I get a couple of more days? One of the core principles of our peer review process is to be fair to everyone and transparent. So we do not entertain such requests unless there is some technical issue with the submission platform, which resulted in delay in submission. So please do not wait till the last moment, we would say, of the cutoff date and time. Prepare your proposal from a little bit beforehand and keep the deadline in mind. For these large calls of extreme scale and regular access, benchmarking results are an important part of it. So we request that apply for benchmark proposal at least 1 month beforehand, so that you can already have your results to put in your application of bigger calls. Then coming to the documents, it is a very important part which we often face, that the project scope and plan document is formatted, or the original structure is changed. This kind of sometimes omits the crucial information from the proposal. So at times we update the template, and then we always make sure that this template is uploaded in the designated call page. So when you are planning or when you're targeting a particular cutoff, please make sure that you have used the correct template of the document for applying to the call. CV and team details. Yes, this is another issue that we sometimes see, that some details of the team members are missing from the proposal. Sometimes, it is not well filled, and then later on to approach again to edit, this goes not quite clean. So we request that always fill it well in the proposal itself, in the online form itself, so that not just JU as well as the hosting entities already know which will be all the team members involved in the project along with the PI. So also to highlight here that when the Access Resource Committee evaluates a proposal, they also take into consideration the strength, let's say the experience and everything of the PI. The strength of the proposal is what I meant by the from the team members of the proposal. So make sure that everyone who will be involved in this is already mentioned in the project online form and the documents. And then the eligibility, well, Clara already talked about it. There are different eligibility criteria in place. So we also would like to emphasize to kindly pay attention to that as well. And one key part here is also to know which access track that your proposal belongs to based on the affiliation of the PI and team members. This sometimes seems to be not the case, so do pay attention to that as well and apply accordingly to the specific access track. So basically, want to say from this that careful verification before submission can prevent applicants from failing the administrative check. And to ensure that proposals, to help proposals pass this, we have now added a checklist within the online form of our project application in extreme scale and regular access call, because the administrative check, which is the sort of the first formal evaluation step of the process, at this stage, the peer review office verifies and verifies that all the project complies with all the eligibility as well as the formatting requirements of the call. And what we check is what we have put in the checklist. So to ensure that you recheck about the eligibility of the PI, and then some of the total of all the research fields mentioned in the project comes to 100%. And then within the project scope and plan document, what are the different things that you have to pay attention to? This as well we mentioned there, but the main thing here is that since most of the applications seem to come at the last moment, and people then fill out this checklist, at the last go, just click everything because otherwise they cannot submit. But this is not the purpose, or this was not the idea of putting this there. If you take time to prepare your proposal, you can, if you have a bit of more time towards the end, then you can indeed do a cross-check yourself whether you have everything that is needed in the project scope and plan document as well. As you can see from the slide, it should include scalability table and plot. Milestone table should show the estimation of the node hours, and that should correspond to what has been filled in the online form. And at last, this is also important that applicants remove the instruction paragraphs and image examples, because what we see is, let's say, for example, in the regular access call, which has the page limit of 10, if you leave these instructions in the format, in the template, then it already kills a lot part of your document, you see. So the main idea is so that you can put as much as information possible in the document for evaluators to know about your goal. So this is why we strongly recommend that please remove these instructions before putting the final draft of the document. And a key reminder for this is that the proposals that do not pass the administrative check, since they do not proceed in the evaluation, sometimes we do get, because once we do the admin check, we of course highlight what things were missing, right? For what reasons it cannot go ahead. And not just go ahead, but sometimes also it goes ahead without those details. But we do hear it from applicants that, okay, now can I submit it? But that is not, possible at that point of the evaluation. So that's why we again emphasize that you please check these points of the checklist nicely before submitting your application. Then moving ahead to the technical evaluation, this part, the technical assessment, focuses on feasibility and the readiness of the execution of the on the requested system, and this is carried out by the hosting entities, and they assess some of the points that they assess, and not limited to, are the benchmark results, the justification of resources, how mature the codes are, if there are any potential bottlenecks, compatibility with the system architecture, and the data management plan. So this is more about the technical part. Moving on to the scientific evaluation. So the experts who evaluate in this phase, there are different evaluators as per the call in which you have applied. So depending on the type of the call, the associated workflow, and the players who are there taking part in the scientific evaluation are different. So we have scientific reviewers who are reviewing. So 3 scientific reviewers review our proposals in the extreme scale access call. This is not part of the regular access, but rapporteurs who are part of the access resource committee, they evaluate both in case of extreme scale and regular access. Of course, different people and different rapporteurs are assigned depending on the proposal. And the ARC chair and the vice chair, they take part in both the evaluation of extreme as well as regular access, and the domain panel chairs are part of the regular access call. There are no domain panel chairs in the extreme scale access call. And evaluators are the last point. It is for the AI for science and data intensive call specifically. They are part of that review process. And the evaluation is actually performed against 3 main criteria, and these are listed here: excellence, innovation and impact, and quality and efficiency. So if it is a scientific access track proposal, then the excellence is given the most weightage. And for industry applications and public sector applications, they are more seen for the innovation and impact part. So the broader, contribution, the novelty of the project, this is given more emphasis in this. So scientific evaluation is the most central part to the ranking process, and the overall scientific evaluation, not just what the rapporteurs do, but not just what the scientific reviewers do, but what the rapporteurs, the ARC members, and everyone does. The evaluators then. Each of these evaluators, the scientific reviewers as well as rapporteurs, they assess proposals against each of these three criterions. They score them, and they do it independently before going to the panel discussion. So moving on to the response phase, this response phase gives, is supposed to give the applicants an opportunity to clarify any concerns raised during the technical and scientific evaluation. So there will be reviewers' concerns, technical and scientific, like rapporteurs' questions as well as comments. And so these are some of the best practices that we want to highlight for handling the response phase. We would suggest to address every question explicitly, not to merge without acknowledging the questions from each expert. To be concise and make the replies evidence-based, with proper references and if any prior results, and not to have vague statements there, not to leave it for assumption. To maintain consistency during while replying, so that what is already in the proposal, it should not contradict that is already there. So this phase should not be seen as a defense, like, not to think that someone is questioning the integrity of the proposal, but rather as an opportunity to improve the clarity and resolve any ambiguities identified by reviewers. So kindly, manage that in the tone as well while replying to these questions. And explain, clearly, so that everything is stated exactly, and what changes and so what changes, if any, that you need to make based on the questions, please mention that as well clearly. The latest update that we have for this call, it is more particularly for the applicants, that the response phase step has been now moved by over a month later in the workflow. So we will contact all the applicants already who has applied in this cutoff, and we will also, you will be able to see it even in our workflow when the changes are made. So now the applicants' response already since last two cutoffs, the questions come not just from the scientific reviewers, but also rapporteurs, and the technical people's questions has already been there. But now what we are introducing is after the rapporteurs do the individual report, as you could see from Clara's workflow step, if you remember. So once in the extreme scale call, once the technical assessment is over, only after that the scientific starts. And within the scientific, once the scientific reviewers' job is done, and once the rapporteurs have done their individual report, only around that time we will introduce these questions, so that when the rapporteurs write the consolidated report, they can take into account the applicant's response as well. So then coming to the ARC committee, what do they do? What is their role in this evaluation, which is a very big part? So the rapporteurs basically consolidated all the reviewers' feedback into a unified assessment. They lead the discussion of on the proposals in the panel, and then they identify consensus, and then if there are any divergence as well, they try to resolve it, and their goal is to support a fair and transparent evaluation process. Meanwhile, when the ARC meets to to have this discussion. It is usually an in-person meeting. It is a very elaborated one. So the committee then focuses on identifying the strength and weaknesses, resolving difference in reviewers' opinion again, and reaching a consensus score from the meeting, so that they basically also do a comparison between proposals, so that at this stage, so that they can establish a scientific ranking that is later on used during the resource allocation panel meeting that you will see in a short while. So yeah, this is about ARC and the rapporteur's role in it. Resource allocation meeting. So once the proposals are scientifically ranked, the resource allocation process meeting determines how available HPC resources are distributed. So of course, the scientific ranking comes from the ARC meeting, as I mentioned, but the allocation decision depends not just on the scientific ranking, but also on the available resources, the actual system availability, partition budgets, and technical feasibility. These are also taken into consideration, and this is more true if a proposal is moved from one partition to the other, then the feasibility, whether it can run on another architecture or not, that is also taken into account. And resources are then allocated based on the access track. So there is 75% from the cutoff reserve. 75% is for scientific proposals, scientific access track proposals. 20% is for industry access track, and 5% for public sector. So the possible outcome of the resource allocation panel meeting can be that the proposal is a particular proposal is fully allocated, or it can be partially allocated because of reasons like the ARC proposed to cut it because they see it that only certain parts of the work packages should go ahead, or sometimes also because there are not enough resources. Or if there are not enough resources, they can also be asked to move to another partition or system. And it might also then lead to rejection because of being below the scientific threshold, or because it cannot be moved to another partition. So one important thing that we would like to mention, I did not write it in the presentation, but that we encourage that applicants mention if their proposal can run on another system. This should not be mentioned, like it does not mean that you should request resources in another machine as an alternative. This is not the idea, but if you mention that it can, if not possible in this system, then we are also flexible to run on the other machine. This helps in the rep meeting to move the proposal if needed. And coming to the final decision, so the final stage involves validation by the governing board. They do an oversight of the final evaluation process, and a formal approval of the allocation is done by the governing board, which is done via 2 weeks written procedure. So after all the evaluation is done, we need to give another 2 weeks to them to approve this. And once this is done, the successful as well as, the outcome of the evaluation is communicated to all applicants, and feedback is also provided to each of the applicant, irrespective of the decision of being awarded or not. And the positively evaluated projects are then asked to accept their resources in the peer reviews portal. And finally, the hosting entities then contact them for project onboarding. That is it about the evaluation process. Just quick summary of all the things that were discussed. So a well-prepared proposal, what were the key points, like clear goals and justified resources and all scalability evidence. And not just the scientific part, but the technical part of the proposal should also be very well written, because that is also a very crucial part of the evaluation. Please pay close attention, to your emails, especially during the phases like in during the response phase as well as award decision, because these are, a week's time where you need to reach out to us and to do in the award acceptance to go to the platform and to accept. So please do it on time. Again, the point that was discussed in detail, that responses can influence the outcome. So please do not neglect it, and clarify to strengthen your proposal wherever there are questions. And always feel free to reach us or the hosting entity in case you have any questions or before the deadline, please, so that we can also take some time to respond. It might take some time, not to wait till the last moment. That's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris, for this very informative overview of the evaluation process. And we do have a lot of questions in the Q&A. So I remind for everyone to use the Q&A function for the questions. And actually, you will find the questions with written answers. Some of the questions have been answered, but we still have some. So I'm going to read the first one. So on the current page for the AI for Science call, there is the following disclaimer that the Leonardo and Meluxina, they are currently unavailable for AI for Science access due to high demand. Does it mean that applications to those supercomputers will be rejected? When will they become available again? And will Jupyter be included in the list?
Okay, so these calls, AI Factory calls, they were in place as first come, first served basis. So basically there is a particular amount of total resources that we offer from these calls, and then if they are exhausted, then the systems are not available anymore for a particular duration of time. So this is the case. This is why this has been put. So indeed, if you apply to that particular machine from a proposal, it will be rejected. What we can suggest is, if possible, to apply to the machine that is available. And if not, then you will have to wait. We foresee that maybe in summer, the system should be back on the calls. It differs like call-wise, it will be different. So please pay attention to the particular page of that call. We will update it when it is available back in the call. And for Jupyter, for now it's not, but we will again update in the webpage when it is going to be available, and if it is going to be available for the call.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll take one more questions and then I'll pass it over to Ivan. Could you please help with the distinction of playground versus fast lane access? We intend to perform simulations in AI development for synthetic biology, just for context.
Okay, it is on the amount of resources. So playground is for even smaller, fast lane is a bit bigger, and that is why the evaluation is even more quicker for playground than the fast lane.
Very nice. Thank you very much. I pass it over to my co-organizer, Ivan Carnimea, who will take the next session.
Thank you very much, Zoe. So I'm Ivan Carnimeo. I'm based in Sissa and Trieste in Italy, and work as scientific software developer on material science, and I'm also a member of the user forum coordination group. I remember, for those who joined recently, that all participants are muted by default, so you can post your questions in the Q&A form. They will be answered. We will read them and ask them to the speakers for the last 5 minutes after each talk, and then there will be a last discussion at the very end of the event. So so let me start with the second part of this webinar that is about the technical part. It will include 2 talks. The first will be from Cineca. It will speak Andrew Emerson, and they will explain more details about the technical assessment process. And then there will be Max Yoi that will provide examples and use cases for code benchmarking taken from the material science field. So let me now introduce Andrew Emerson. Andrew Emerson is a senior researcher and HPC specialist at Cineca. He's also senior reviewer. He works in the fields of theoretical chemistry, material science, and life sciences. He's also coordination of the Epicure project that will be mentioned in this talk, and is a referent in the Access Calls application form. So he will speak about the technical evaluation of the applications and the role of Epicure. So please, Andrew, the room is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Hope you can hear me okay. Let me just...
Yes, we can hear you.
That's great, good.
Yes.
I'm not actually coordinator of the Epicure project, but I'm head of the code optimization work package. Okay, so yeah, so thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me. Krish and Clara have already mentioned quite a lot about the various processes for requesting European EuroHPC projects. So I should go sort of fairly quickly over these first few slides. And then in the second half of my talk, I would like to talk more in detail about requests if you need support for EuroHPC projects. So from the technical evaluation point of view, I mean, clearly we need to understand if your project is going to work, given the time restraints, resource restraints, and also the the hardware on which you wish to run your project. So, I mean, we need to analyze all these things. The level of analysis obviously depends upon what sort of call it is. So if it's extreme access, then obviously we need to go, in very strong detail. But with development and benchmark, obviously the criteria are much less. It should be pointed out that EuroHPC provides technical guidelines, and you should look at these if you want to before you start the project. So let's look at some of the sections. So one of these, particularly important one, of course, is the software you wish to use, the code. If it's, let me just say that if you're using a fairly well-known code, let's say, I don't know, like Romex example, we don't need paragraphs and paragraphs of details because, I mean, they're fairly well-known. But we do need a lot more information instead if this is something you have written yourself or you and your team have developed a code. So for this, we do need quite a lot of information as to how it works. So, I mean, if it requires GPUs, is it for NVIDIA or AMD? What sort of libraries or workflows? And also things like relevance of I/O, for example. So, I mean, I/O can be a bottleneck, particularly if you want to run at very large scale. So this is something to consider. This is why, particularly, as I said, if you have your own software or you have a sort of a non-standard software, you do need to fill in these sections very carefully. And then this is the section of the regular and the extreme access where you need to in the application forms where you need to put this information in. Clearly, the resource requests should match more or less within the limits of the course. If it's a very low, then for extremes, say, then it may be more more appropriate in a regular or something like that. The other thing is about data management. Now, this is something which has come up a lot recently with AI, because even if in, let's say, development, benchmark, regular, and extreme, these are not AI cores as such. We are seeing people who wish to combine HPC with AI. And that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, we see a lot of AI being used with traditional HPC. And this means that sometimes we're seeing resource requests for a large amount of data, occasionally even petabytes, frequently perhaps hundreds of terabytes. This transferring large amounts of data is not that trivial, particularly if it's, I don't know, several hundreds of terabytes. You're going to need some sort of justification, because yeah, really, it's not that easy, particularly if the data are being transferred from, let's say, a laboratory to the HPC center. So be prepared to have some sort of a justification for transferring large amounts of data, particularly in these sort of HPC plus AI situations. There we come to the performance. Obviously, this is very important. And must be considered very carefully. Depending on the call, you may need benchmarks on the machine that you wish to have the project for. And this is where the development and particularly the benchmark access comes in. So if you want to run on Leonardo or Mare Nostrum or whatever, or Lumi, whatever machine, so it's a good idea to start with a benchmark access first to get the data you have. And then this obviously is a stronger case for then having a bigger project. So if you have data for the machine, then this is a very good case. If you don't have this data for whatever reason, you do have to justify very well why your scaling data is good for that machine. In the form, they ask for both strong and weak scaling. Sometimes not both types of scaling are appropriate, but in which case you should justify why not. I mean, I think it's reasonable if you only provide strong scaling data, for example, but you should say why, for example, you haven't included weak scaling. And the other point is that ideally, so the data should be meaningful for your input. So again, sometimes we see projects where the data have been taken for a different input from the web or somewhere. So, I mean, this should be your data using your input and not somebody else's. Then there's the other point, milestones. So the idea of milestones is such that you can divide your project up into the various sections. But each section has one or more codes. And then, and from this table, you can be used to decide how many node hours you require for your project. I put that total should be correct because we do check to see if the sums add up, and sometimes they don't. So it's really important to do a quick check here. I mean, check that the total hours that you require does equal to the various stages in your project. And then this is a Gantt chart. So a Gantt chart, I can't remember if it's requested or not, but it is a very, very good idea. It also shows that you're planning your project. The important thing about the Gantt chart is that you should try, and your planning should be as linear as possible in time. I know this is not always possible, but it is not possible for HPC centers, for example, to prioritize your jobs towards the end of the job allocation. We just can't do that. So it's a good idea to do this Gantt chart to make sure that the various things you need to do in your project are sort of done in a linear way. And in that case, the project is more likely to go well. So yeah, clearly if there's outages on machine or whatever, it's another thing. But, if only 50% of your time has been used towards the final month of the project, we can't prioritize that sort of thing. And this is and the things like the job size are included in these sections here. All right, now I would like to sort of look for if you need support for your project, and in particular, so you'll find a section on the application form which says, do you require application support team, AST? And so this is, how you can get help for whatever class of our UOP application, as long as it's benchmark, developer, regular, or extreme. AI calls, by the way, it should go to Malexina. But if it's one of those 4 subjects, it can go to the AST. And the application support in EuroHPC is managed by Epicure. Epicure is a large consortium of all the major computer centers in Europe, and we can give you help on your EuroHPC project. So let me just go. So what sort of things can we do? We have various levels of support, deciding what you need. I mean, we can help you with code enabling and scaling, performance analysis, or we can go even sort of deeper into your code if you like. So we can do code refactoring, and we can do optimization. So in fact, we do a lot of optimization of codes. Who's eligible? So you must have a EuroHPC project for this, okay? So and it must be one of the regular extreme developmental benchmark. If you don't have one, then apply for one, and we can help you if you like. Just get in contact with us, and then once you have one, as soon as we have the EuroHPC ID, we can then help you, with your project. So, as I said, these are the 4 classes of project we can help you with in Epicure. Let's just emphasize what we can't help you with. So national project use and resources not come from EuroHPC. That must be done by the national institutions, and AI factories instead should go to Minerva. So if you want to get into the EuroHPC projects, and you don't have the relevant benchmark data or perhaps a stable software, then you should consider, for example, submitting a development access proposal and request application support. And then we will help you develop your software, get the data you need, for which you can later, if you wish, go for one of the larger projects like regular or extreme. So yeah, just to emphasize what we can do. We can do just about anything really, involving porting, enabling scaling, optimization, but things like, I don't know, passwords and stuff like that, that instead should be handled by the HPC center for where you have the project. And well, here's just some data of the first 18 months of the project. So have a look at our portal here, the EuroHPC support portal, or contact us, and we can show you some of the things we've done. So I mean, we've supported well over 80 projects so far, optimized 70 applications. We also have done AI sort of projects in the form of development rather than pure AI, profiling, benchmarking, enabling, supporting, and we can also help you with things like containerization, workflows, data, that sort of stuff. So if in doubt, please just contact us at those addresses there. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So I see that there are a couple of questions in the Q&A. I've seen 2 questions quite related that were about the GPU resources. So I can probably merge them. So one is, can you request both CPU and GPU time in a single call? The other, can you clarify the difference between GPU hours and node hours? So probably we could, you could comment a little bit about some particular requests regarding GPUs.
So yeah, unfortunately, there's various centers use different sorts of units. So let me take the example of Leonardo. So Leonardo, we have 4 GPUs per node. So in this case, 1 node hour equals 4 GPU hours. So yeah, things like that. On the other HPC sites, it's different. But check with the HPC sites. And I think you can, your HPC colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can request both CPU and GPU resources. In fact, sometimes this makes sense, particularly if you want to train a machine learning model with a program which doesn't use GPUs. You can run this on the CPU and then use this to train the model on the GPU. So I believe it's possible.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will try to merge other 2 questions that seems quite similar. So with the first is, what did you mean by well-known codes, which don't require a detailed description?
All right. So All right.
There was another question that
yeah.
it's kind of related. Like in the performance demonstration, we required both strong scaling and weak scaling with graph and table. These graphs are the same format. So I see there are. If you could explain, because you mentioned that there is a difference between well-known code and less.
Well, I guess you know it's well known, and if you don't know it, it's not well known. So, I mean, there are some various codes, particularly those handled by the centers of excellence, like Space or Max and so on. I'm not saying you shouldn't describe them, because it may well be that the various committees are from different fields and they don't know. I mean, something like Romex, Quantum Espresso, and so on are fairly well known. You should still describe them, but clearly, if it's a homemade code, I think that's probably the description. Some code that you've done yourself, you probably need to go into a bit more detail, particularly if there's no documentation out there on the web, so to speak. So I agree. It's perhaps it's not a very good terminology, but if there's a difference between code which is used in the community, and Nemo is fairly well known, I would say, as opposed to a code you have written yourself, for which perhaps all you have is a GitHub. I would say that's probably the difference.
Okay. So probably we can move on to the next talk, and then we can check at the end of the discussions if other questions related to the technical assessment come. We can ask them again. Let me move to the next talk. It will be Andrea Ferretti will speak about some benchmarking and profiling experience in the MaxCOE. I think it comes quite useful because it can be helpful for everyone to take like an example of what can be done in the performance assessment. Andrea Ferretti is a research director at the Italian National Research Council and the chair of executive committee of the Max Center of Excellence. So he will share the experience developed within the Max project in benchmarking codes and use cases, highlighting aspects that are particularly relevant for the access call applications form. So please, Andrea, you can start.
Thank you very much, Ivan, for the introduction and for the invitation. I hope you hear my mic and see my slides.
Yes, we can hear you. I can see your screen.
Very well. So, as Ivan said, in this talk, I'm going to give some overview of some benchmarking activities that are performed within the MaxCOE on material science electronic structure codes, and how this, let's say, positively interfere or support the process of applying for resources on EuroHPC machines. And I think this snapshot we have just seen, but just to reiterate the message that relevant software-related technical information is required, and for all kind of codes, and also we need to quantify the performance of the codes on this specific use cases that we want to study within the application. So this is the second very key message. So what I'm going to show are general purpose measurements of the performance, scaling tests, and so on. Of course, those are going to work as a guidance for what the codes can achieve, what the code can do. But then it's very important to pair those general purpose data with data specific to your system in order to make sure that the actual usage of the codes is well done. So here is the outline of this presentation. I'll briefly introduce the context of material science, what is the positioning with respect to exascale, and some HPC use cases, and what the MaxCOE does. And I'll quickly go through benchmarks. So what is the scope and structure of the activity? What are the resources that we collect and provide, and a few mention of the different metrics used. Eventually, I'll go through some data concerning the different codes. So first of all, what I'm talking about here are electronic structure codes that is a part of material science. Typically, I mean, in terms of HPC usage, is like half of it, and these are very accurate, predictive, and definitely computationally demanding. So they are really a case for HPC and for exascale, and eventually this can be, so these are based on quantum mechanics modeling from first principles, and these eventually can be combined for multi-scale approaches, nowadays also based on machine learning potentials, just to name one. And here there is a triangle of possible usage models. So exascale or HPC can really improve the modeling we do for the system. That is, we can include complexity or real life details in the modeling. We can also climb a accuracy ladder, so we can look for complicated, so properties that require some complicated workflows or require higher accuracy. And also all of this can be combined with the high throughput computational screening. So we can just scan the space of chemical complexity and search for diverse materials fulfilling some properties. And all of this nowadays, in a sort of moving target kind of style, has to deal with machine learning, but even more with artificial intelligence at large. So when AI needs to be combined into the loop and is there, and we see day by day new approaches coming up. Here is an example of complexity where experiments predict some, experiments detect some specific features that we can now nicely introduce into the description. So this is complexity. Here is an example of high throughput combined with some complex properties. Here people were looking for colors. So in the colors of metals, and in the upper row, you see the simulations. In the bottom panels, you see the picture. So you see the level of accuracy that one can achieve with these methods. But this is really the outcome of a very complicated workflow, and this is combined with some high throughput simulations where you scan thousands of different materials, searching for the proper alloying that grants the proper pink, gold kind of color. And eventually, we also have some hierarchies of methods that can be climbed in order to tune or select the accuracy that is needed for the application. So there is DFT somehow that is the workhorse here, but then you can climb really DFT with I don't know, hybrid functionals or beyond DFT methods and so on and so forth. So there is a whole hierarchy of methods, and having access to large-scale HPC resources really allows for climbing these hierarchies. And here is what the MaxIOE does. It works, it was built on a selection of large-scale open source code, and clearly has to do with parallel optimization and performance portability on available HPC machines, especially from EuroHPC. And while, so all the codes are now GPU aware, of course, since most of the machines around our GPU are with GPUs, and also we perform hardware software co-design. Importantly, as we're going to see in the benchmarks, one of the new metrics is really energy efficiency, and within the COE we can now measure this. This also comes with a large effort on education and training material available. So just to make one example about what is the day-by-day activity here, one of the goals is really to have codes running and taking advantage of whole HPC machines. And if we look at GPU accelerated machine, the whole Jupyter is about 24,000 H100 GPUs. So somehow we need to combine extreme parallelism with GPU awareness. And that is one of the key aspects and actions that the Center of Excellence has to undertake. And here is some examples from one of our codes that taking over almost the whole Leonardo machine. Now, let me quickly go to the benchmarking case. So how is this done in practice? Also, because whenever we talk about improving performance, tackling the performance portability, of course, we need to have measures of what we do, what we achieve. Is the code ported with some decent performance? All of these, also all the CO activities, in a sense, they boil down to properly measure performance. And here we come to benchmarking. And so we need to collect benchmarking data that then we make available to users. And these are handy also for a number of other situations, as the one we are describing here, that is applying for access to HPC machines. So first of all, it was decided within the beginning of the project to use Jube as a single benchmarking environment for all the codes. And this is just to adopt a standard that allows for standard collection of data, also for reproducibility and in turn also accessibility of the data. And importantly, there are all of these data are collected in public repositories. There's a repository with all the input files connected to the benchmarks, is the first one here. And then there is a repository with the data over different versions of the codes, over different machines, partitions, and so on and so forth. And here is how the first the actual benchmarks are set up. First of all, platforms are identified, and here we see a number from EuroHPC machines. Applications are the max flagship codes. We have workloads. So each code could have multiple workloads, and there are also post-processing tools. For instance, here, let me just mention Merrick, that is a tool used for measuring and tuning of energy efficiency of the codes. And here we come to the portal with the data. In this QR code, basically, there's app built on top of the repo to just display data. So here there are different runs of different benchmarks, different versions of the codes, different machines, and so on and so forth. This is an example from Quantum Espresso. One aspect that I've already mentioned that I think is important to stress is that while for users most of the time we are interested in execution time, so time to solution, we also now have access to hardware counters that allow for a large set of extra analysis. And from time to time, these data are also collected and made available. And again, here, let me mention, for instance, energy efficiency. That is one important metrics that is now mentioned everywhere. So with this data on top of our benchmarking activities, we can really also perform this extra analysis. Here is a roofline model analysis that just detects whether your code and use case are CPU bound or memory bound. But this is possible because of this benchmarking activity and the access to hardware counters. And here is another aspect, another side of the story, that is, if you want to benchmark over different machines already within EuroHPC, we have now we are in the order of tens of machines and partitions. It's important to have tools to easily deploy, and within Max we support Easy Build and Spark, and there is also support for Easy. And here is the status of things. There is also a webinar where an hackathon actually happening next week to further extend this support, because this is really crucial nowadays. And that is really connected to this table that I think is relevant for users. That is the deployment table of the Max flagship codes over the different machines of EuroHPC, different partitions with GPUs, without GPUs, and so on and so forth. Here there are different levels of deployment, deployment with modules, deployment that is demonstrated by the developers, machine that is supported but without known, so just because the installation, the architecture is supported, but we don't have a module, for instance, there, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here let me go quickly through some selected results. And as I mentioned earlier on, one of the core business of the Center of Excellence is really to track performance, and here is how it looks like. So this is Quantum Espresso over different relevant use cases with different scientific and technological impacts. And here we see how the performance in terms of time to solution, I would say, improves across different versions of the code. There is another code, Siesta. In this case, the performance portability is mostly achieved via the external libraries like PEXI or Helpa. So here is the performance of the code while using different libraries. And again, also over different machines with GPUs, without GPUs, and so on. Here, importantly, Mare Nostrum, one of the pre-exascale machines of EuroHPC. And that is a general purpose, if you want, analysis. Here is a more specialized one, still using Quantum Espresso as a vehicle. That is how HPCX MPI performs as compared, for instance, to OpenMPI. This is if you want, a more technical and specialized aspect, but could also be, first of all, it's relevant, is a relevant piece of information. It's relevant to know also from the user point of view. Perhaps you on the machines find different builds of a code. So this data also help providing some guidance about which one to choose according to, again, to your run level. Here is another specialized piece of information, though very relevant now. This picture here is from the NVIDIA website. We are kind of proud they use Quantum Espresso in their benchmark suite. And here we see the performance of Quantum Espresso while changing the FP64 emulation according to their emulation implementation of GEMS in Kublas. So this is very relevant, as we'll see from new cards that are somehow more oriented towards AI, so they tend to feature less FP64, and then FP64 can be emulated. And so this is basically going to be the business of software development in the next one of the businesses in the next few years. And here is another specialized piece of information. So the support of distributed linear algebra on GPUs. This is a solution of a bottleneck caused by the Scalapack routine. Is an old library for distributed linear algebra on CPU. Now with QSolver MP, we were able just to sort out the bottleneck, and these are the data. Also, this is very relevant. So if your use case is very limited by some linear algebra operations within Yambo, you may want to go for builds that support QSolver MP, just to name one. And still in these specialized aspects also related to new and large GPUs, there is the use and effectiveness of MPS, multi-process service on Max codes. That is that here using MPS you can have multiple tasks on a single GPUs, and here is the case of Quantum Espresso and Siesta, and here you see that you are actually improving by using NPS. This is especially relevant already at the level of H100, so Mare Nostrum 5 and Jupiter.
Sorry, Andrea,
okay.
We have to, 2 minutes left.
Perfect. I'm almost done. And now let me come to one of the real core businesses here, that is supporting different machines and being able to port and deploy the code on different machines. Here is a deployment of Yambo on Leonardo machines. I've already seen some data. Here is the same code deployed on Lumi and compared with Leonardo Booster in terms of time to solution and performance. Yambo still on Mare Nostrum 5. Booster partition with H100, again with analyzing the effect of MPS that turns out to be efficient and effective also in this case. And here Yambo on ARM-based chips like Fujitsu A64 FX is also featured by some of your CP machine, the Ocalion here. And last but not least, now most Max codes are being ported on Jupiter, but here let me mention Floor, that was the first one ported on Jupiter via the JEDI program. Okay, and here is somehow a summary of the story, so that there is some technical work that eventually enables users to run their science. Here is a photocatalytic slab of TiO2 where you want to compute optical properties that are very time consuming. And so here is the final optical spectra out of all this porting and optimization. And here are my conclusions. So somehow test cases are identified and regularly updated. This is important. Data are available. I think this is very important. These data have been obtained using Jube. So far, most time to solution, but also cost and energy to solution that are become valid metrics. And we use this to evaluate parallel performance and performance portability across a number of architectures. I would like to say that so far a remarkable bulk of data have been collected. A couple of disclaimers or warning. One is that the non-maturity or the maturity of different software stacks may play a role, so that need to be taken into account. And also that when these codes are embedded in workflows, additional assessment may be needed. So if you have a very complex workflow, you also need to make sure that the performance of the workflow itself is well established and works well on the machine you select. And with this, let me thank you for the attention.
Okay, so thank you very much, Andrea. We have to move quite fast because we are a bit out of time. I've seen a question in chat regarding energy consumption that has been answered in the chat. I remember everyone that the participants are muted, so you can post questions in the Q&A. They will be answered in chat, and then we will pick up a couple of questions to ask directly to the speakers. So I will just ask a very quick question to Andrea regarding how do you see in the next years the evolution of the software. So we have different technologies coming, AI and large data sets to be processed, architectures are evolving. So if you can summarize really in 30 seconds, what do you see in the next years for the software to evolve on HPC?
Yeah, thanks for the I think one of the aspects is really to reply to a sort of where the trend of the hardware, and because our software really need to adapt on the existing hardware. So surely part of this is related to the trend of hardware evolution that is driven by AI. So on the one side, we'll need to deal with GPUs that are larger and larger. Luckily, the trend is also with memory, GPU memory increasing. That is good for us, but FP64 is reducing. So to this side, as I already mentioned, the FP64 emulation is a rather relevant, is a very relevant aspect. The use of MPS also is very clear, and this is really the near future. And then in the near to medium term future, we also see combination of workflows with AI, agentic AI, so the interaction of users with AI, so perhaps the user interface will be enabled or further expanded using AI, so natural language rather than a real let's say more specific language, and then how that can be combined within workflows, including agentic AI, and how all of this fits into the machine. So these are two clear trends that we clearly see.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea. So I leave the room to Alessio, who will introduce the last part of this webinar.
Morning, my name is Alessio Roccon, and I'm based in the University of Udine in Italy. And it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, that will be Antonio Posa. And will tell us something about a successful application of a EuroHPC project. Antonio Posa is a senior research scientist at the Institute of Marine Engineering in Rome. His field of interest is mainly fluid mechanics, with a focus on large eddy simulation of incompressible flows and the application of the immersive boundary method. Please, Antonio, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. One moment. Let's share my screen. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you very much for your introduction and in general for the invitation. I was invited by EuroHPC to provide some insight about my earlier experience in applying for both regular and extreme scale access. About this point, I would like to thank EuroHPC for providing me access to Melusina, Lumi, and Leonardo in the past few years. Here I took as an example an application that I submitted in 2024 to Extreme Scale Access about the wake system of unconventional marine propellers. Of course, this is not a presentation on unconventional marine propeller, is just an example. Then an important point that we have to consider when you apply for both regular or extreme scale access is that, of course, you have to demonstrate that your work is going to advance your particular field, providing advantages to the economy, the society, the environment, as in the specific case. But it's also important that you demonstrate that these results can be achieved just through HPC on a state-of-the-art supercomputers. In other words, you have to demonstrate that this work can be performed just on the supercomputers that are made available to the call by EuroHPC, rather than on a smaller cluster or even large workstations. And about this point, an important step is being able to tie the request of the allocation that you are requesting to the scaling test that you perform on the selected machine. In other words, you are required to provide the scaling test, and then you have to exploit the results of this scaling test, also to provide a clear quantification of your request. In the particular case, I was going to perform 5 big computations on a conventional propeller and 4 unconventional propellers, the scaling test that I conducted on the specific machine, in this particular case, Leonardo, allowed me to select the proper size of the simulation corresponding to 64 CPU nodes, and to define the number of die step and the wall time per step. In other words, it is important that you exploit the results of the scaling test also to provide a clear quantification of your allocation, because of course you don't want that the request, the particular request that you are reporting your application get challenged. Then, as discussed in several presentations, the scaling tests are mandatory, both for regular access and extreme scale access. Here I report the results, some results of a strong scaling test carried out on Leonardo on the particular problem that I was going to resolve. And in particular, I report here the selected size of the computation that correspond to 64 nodes in this case. In fact, the scaling tests are important not only to demonstrate that your solver is able to run efficiently on the particular machine for the particular problem that you are resolving, but it's also important to define the amount of resources that you need, but also the correct size of your simulation. For instance, in this case, I was applying for resources on Leonardo in the framework of extreme scale access. Therefore, computation on 64 nodes were suitable. Maybe on a smaller cluster in the framework of a regular access call, I would have selected computation on 32 or 16 nodes. Then the scaling tests are important also for defining the right size of your computation. Here I report also results of weak scaling tests that are also mandatory on the selected machine for the particular problem that you are solving. The selection of the proper machine where to run is another important aspect. Is an important aspect because, of course, you have to choose the machine where you are expected to run more efficiently. For instance, an option, a good idea could be to apply in a framework of benchmark access to several machines in order to test your solver on different machines. Then you can select the one where your solver performs the best. In any case, when you demonstrate that your solver is able to run on several machines, you can select the best machine when you apply for regular or extreme scale access. This is the table that was published in the framework of extreme scale access in the last call by EuroHPC. And then you can see that the selection of the best machine for your case is dependent, of course, on the performance of your solver, but may be dependent also on other parameters. For instance, each machine gives you the opportunity to apply for extreme scale access if you satisfy a minimum request. In other words, if based on your estimate, your request would be below this number, then you will switch to regular access. Also, another important parameter that needs to be taken into account is the amount of total resources available that, of course, will define also the level of competition on the particular machine. Regular access is thought for a smaller project. Actually, you have to take into account that also in this case there is a minimum requirement in terms of resources. Of course, these requirements are smaller in comparison with the one characterizing extreme scale access. You have access to more machines than in the framework of extreme scale access. Here I took just a part of the table that was published. You can see that actually you have available in the framework of extreme scale access the same machine that in the framework of regular access, the same machine that are available through extreme scale access and smaller machine. Here you see the Eucalion, but there are also, in the last call, there were also Carolina, Meluxina, and Discoverer. For the machine that are available also to extreme scale access, actually you have in the framework of regular access also a maximum request, because otherwise you need to switch to extreme scale access. Of course, if your estimate of computational resources is below the minimum requirement for regular access, you have to switch to a national call, for instance, or maybe you can, let's say, rearrange your project in order to increase its size. The overview of the project represents the main part of the document that you have to submit together with your application. And the overview of the project, of course, needs to describe your computation, your motivation, and the expected outcome. But again, it is very important that you demonstrate that your project requires access to HPC resources, and that the target of your work are tied to the access, are strictly tied to the access of to HPC resources. And because of that, your solver, that of course may be a commercial solver, an open source solver, or an in-house solvers that you developed, needs to be ready to run. In other words, benchmark and development are not in the framework of regular access and extreme scale access. Then you have to demonstrate that you are ready to run, and you have to demonstrate that your solver and your particular approach was already validated and verified. In other words, you have to demonstrate that you are ready for production runs. In my particular case, I had the opportunity to, let's say, report several publications using the same approach, the same solver for analyzing the weight system of marine propellers. And of course, it's always a good idea to promise in your application also additional verification and validation relevant to the particular problem that you are resolving. About the comparison with the state-of-the-art, that also is part of the document that you have to submit. Of course, you have to demonstrate that your work is going to advance your particular field, but you have also to demonstrate that your computational approach is some feature in terms of computational efficiency and in terms of accuracy that make this approach state-of-the-art, and that, of course, make your approach worth of be awarded computational resources. Of course, an important part of each application for extreme scale access and regular access is that you have to require a certain amount of computational resource in terms of CPU or GPU. But if you are performing computations that are intensive, probably they are also input-output intensive. And then you have to demonstrate that you can do this input-output activity efficiently. Then actually, when you provide the performance of your solver, you have to demonstrate that your input-output activities are also efficient enough, possibly performed in parallel. And it's also important that you define and satisfy the limit to the requirement in terms of size of the data that you are generating and the number of files that you are generating, because each call and each cluster for each call has some requirement that you have to satisfy in terms of amount of data that you are going to generate, in terms of also of number of files that you are going to generate. In other words, it's always important that you check the technical requirement for each machine when we are going to submit your application. It is also important that you provide a credible plan for data management, because of course you are going to be granted a big amount of resources to generate a big amount of data, probably. And it's important that this data get stored properly at the end of your project. You have to consider that at the end of your allocation, you have typically between 2 and 6 months, depending on the particular computing center, to transfer your data before it gets erased from the particular machine where you put the allocation. About the project workflow, actually the Gantt chart is also mandatory in each application that you submit to both regular and extreme scale access. Of course, the project workflow is strongly dependent on the particular project that you are developing. In general, my advice is to keep the project workflow as simple as possible. In my case, I had just 5 big computations to run. This is an advantage because actually you have also some limitation on the number of jobs that you can run simultaneously on each machine. And also is important to check also this limitation when you apply for access to computational resources. Also, the other advantage in this particular project workflow is that each case is independent between each other, and practically it has available the all yearly allocation to run. Also, in my project workflow, I try also to keep always keep some room at the end of the main production run. Actually, this production run were planned to run for 8 months. 4 months for weight development, additional 4 months for statistical sampling. And then the last 4 months were allocated for data analysis and also for data transfer. This, of course, give also some time for recovering unexpected delays on the main production run. Of course, give time for analyzing the data because probably you need HPC also for the analysis of a big amount of data that you are going to generate, and also give you some more time for data transfer at the end of the main production runs. For the dissemination plan, of course, you are expected to publish your work in high-impact journal and conferences. This part is in some way tied also to the data management plan, because of course, for dissemination plan, I always mean also that the data that you are going to generate will be in some way available to other scholars. You are going to perform a state-of-the-art computation on a state-of-the-art supercomputer, then it is expected that you can save your data and make them available to others, at least upon request for a reference. And about the description of the team members, let's say the requirement for the team members in terms of affiliation were discussed in the previous presentation. I can just stress that, of course, it's important that you demonstrate that the team members are well experienced in your particular field, but also well experienced in HPC computing. And since is also something that was mentioned in my previous application, it's also important that the team is, let's say, big enough to handle the big amount of work that this large computation and the relevant data analysis required at the end of the main production runs. I have done. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for the nice presentation. Do we have any question specific for Antonio? Because then we will have the general Q&A question. If not, I can start with one. So I saw in your slide that you have generated about 100 terabytes of data. How do you handle all this part? Do you download this data? I guess this is going to cost a lot in terms of overdrive or storage, or do you have like some data project in which you can store the data and share if needed?
Actually, 100 terabytes is, let's say, a big amount of data. Of course, it depends. This big amount of data depends also on the particular machine, in the sense that on Leonardo can be handled, on other machine maybe it's not. Typically, I ask for, I apply to national call. Typically, I apply to national call like ISCRA-D by Shineka to handle this data. Otherwise, I will need to transfer this data on local facilities. That, of course, will be more complicated in terms of data transfer, but of course, will be also more complicated in terms of getting access to this amount of storage. Typically, I exploit national calls for doing this.
Okay, perfect. One more question that is merely more curiosity. I see you develop your code. Which are the main challenges in getting, let's say, a strong scaling result, or do you get any support to develop your code to get, let's say, the best performance from your code?
About the main challenges for strong scaling, let's say that, of course, any solver has a point where scaling is not anymore linear. Of course, we can say that in my experience, the bigger the problem, the larger is the number of nodes that you can achieve with linear scaling. Then, of course, this is in line with the spirit of the philosophy of extreme scale access or regular access, because practically you are expected to run not a large number of small computation, but in contrast, a small number of big computation, at least in my experience. Of course, if you run a big problem, you can exploit the best the scaling performance of your solver.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. And I think we can close the specific Q&A for your talk and move to the general Q&A. So in this case, all the presenter can reply or intervene. So we have first a question from Michele Pellegrino. I think this is mainly on proposal preparation. So are massively scaling proposal, few simulation, many nodes per simulation, going to be generally evaluated more positively than high throughput proposal, many simulation, few nodes per simulation? Some simulation like molecular dynamics don't really benefit a lot from weak scaling and show it that it's better to run a large system of 16 nodes instead of 16 replicates on one node each. Is going to be very difficult. Okay, see, Andrew Emerson already replied. So
Yeah,
Andrew, do you want to add something?
Yeah, no,
on
so
that?
yeah, in general, okay, I have my own views about this, but the scientific evaluation committee don't always like high throughput, these sort of high throughput sort of workloads. Some people write their M&D projects in such a way that they're not high throughput, but they use metadynamics, replica exchange, or some other sort of replica method. And these are generally more successful than purely high throughput. Yeah, I realize that some people want to do this sort of workloads, but one argument against, if there's no use of the network, then it's not really a parallel situation. But yeah, but from my own experience, the truly high throughput ones are not often successful.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have another question. Is the regular access call suitable for multiple medium-sized projects conducted by the same group, or it is mainly aimed at a single project that aims to use more than 100 known hours?
I can do this one. So the experience from before, what we had, but we see that the committee doesn't like many projects clubbed into one and then presenting it as one large scale project, right? So in this line, but of course it depends on the work, but in this line, I would tend to say that it's better to have smaller projects if they can be conducted in this way. However, do pay attention if you submit them at the same time, because there we will apply that in principle, we have one PI with one project in a given time. However, we may allocate more projects to the same group in case we have resources left, but as you have heard, we have quite proposals running there. So yeah, it will be a bit of self-intuition kind of there in that case. Just be aware if you club a lot of projects into one to present one large scale, it's not really a large scale project. So
Thank you. Now there is no any more question on the Q&A, but maybe we can have some more, let's say, general question on for especially in terms of future perspective. So how do you think this call will evolve over time as like with this kind of competition between AI workloads and more, say, high performance computing projects. Maybe we can discuss this a bit, just to give an overview to the user, or which code are more suitable for certain type of application. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on this point.
Yeah, I think I think Clara mentioned this earlier. You will often see quite a few hybrid projects. In fact, many of the projects which are going through the HPC calls also include an AI, part of it. So this is something which people are doing, and I think this is really very interesting to see the use of AI in traditional HPC. I don't know, to improve the physics or the force field or whatever. I think is very interesting, and it's bringing some very useful results in this field.
Yes, I agree. There is this very interesting field that is at the crossroad between, let's say, AI and standard, more traditional high performance computing that is looking very interesting. One other general question from with the growing spread of workloads related to large-scale training and exascale calculation, how do you foresee access to HPC system evolving? Not sure if anyone wants to answer this question, probably more.
I mean, I guess it's a for UHPC. I don't know. It's
Yes.
yeah.
It's not an as one.
I think it's be useful to have to completely give up on traditional HPC. I think it would be a bit sad. But yeah, I understand people want to do AI as well.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. If we don't have any other question, I think we are all looking for lunch and break. I think we can close this webinar. Let me first...
There was one other question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, there is a question from Adam. What if we don't use all the time? So if we don't use all the allocated resources?
Yes, so yeah, it was indeed answered before. So please use your resources. This is the first message there. Communicate with the hosting entities. Don't think already, let's not use them. So it's an award, it's resources, and please use them. Of course, there are situations, there are technical issues, there, things happen, of course. But please, this needs to be justified. It cannot be, okay, I'm not using anything for the full, 11 months, and then on 12 months, I want to use everything. So this doesn't work, obviously. We expect also in the proposal preparation stage that this is nicely presented, basically how you plan on using, and if you need to do like hero runs, like we'll be using the full machines or so, that this needs to be indicated, needs to be communicated with the hosting entities so they can prepare, because you're not the only user on the system as well, so we need to take this into consideration. And as well, if it's not used and then you request an extension, I mean, if the usage is super low, we will not grant it. So the extension is not this is not the purpose of the extension. Furthermore, if we see that there is very low usage and the same group applies again with a different project, this may significantly impact the result. But even if the science is fantastic, but I mean, if it's not used, then why are we? I mean, we are taking from someone else that may use the resources. So we do pay attention to that, and it's not a minor thing. So please use your resources.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay, I think Josephine already did it instead of me. And this is the last slide in which you can find more resources or if you want to contact us or get in touch with the EuroHPC user forum. We have two main channels. The first one is the Slack, in which you can post your question. Maybe not the technical one, maybe them are better suited for the HPC Center and also the Discord. So if you scan this 2 QR code, you should be able to join the Slack and the Discord channels. And yeah, I see there is a last question from Josephine. So please.
It wasn't really a question. It's just from the JU side. If I could invite everybody to take the reporting request very seriously. I know it can be a bit painful sometimes to report on all the different things that we've asked you to report on, but it's very, very useful, and it links into the question about whether or not what happens to the supercomputers, and what happens to those that are pure HPC and then those that are pure AI. We have been asked by the governments and the Commission, European Union, to invest in HPC and in AI systems. The idea is that once the AI factories come online, most of the usage will go on, AI usage will move on to the AI factories, which will hopefully liberate space for the more traditional systems like Jupyter and Alice Lecoq, etc. But we also need the data that you put in the reporting mechanism to, let's be honest, discuss the next budgets for the next systems. And I just want to point out to all of you that the discussion about what happens next in terms of our investments in the future is beginning now. And we are beginning to be asked, what impact has all this investment made to society, to the SDGs, etc. And was this investment worth it? So just to be very blunt with you all, but I think you probably prefer me to be straight with you. The more you can tell us what you've achieved, and the more you can report back on everything, including whether you've used all the resources provided to you and how much energy you've burnt as a result. So the CO2 elements are very, very, very important for us. So voilà, that's kind of my closing message to you all. Use our resources, use them wisely, use them well, and hopefully the research that comes out, it will make an impact on everybody. So thank you.
Thank you for this insight and on the preparation of the report and how important they are. Then I would like to thank you, EuroHPC, first, the User Forum Coordination Group, for organizing this webinar, especially Eva and Zoe, that did a lot of work for finding the speaker and contacting them and organize this webinar. I hope you enjoy this meeting, this webinar, and find it useful for preparing your project. I'm not sure if Chris or someone from EuroHPC want to say the last few words. Otherwise, we can probably end here this webinar.
And thank you, Alessio, that you also did a lot of work.
You did most of it, don't worry. Okay.
Thanks to everyone. Thanks for staying so long.
And thank you from the JU side to all the organisers. It's really, and if you think it was useful, then we're happy to facilitate other ones like this in the future. Just let us know. Thank you.
Perfect. So let's close the webinar, and enjoy your lunch. I think you really deserve it after 2.5 hours here listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.